For us to have General Andrews obviously recognized. There's been some great press about him in the news recently, about being one of the sort of unsung heroes of Tennessee, and how fortunate we feel to have him as an alumnus, and how much fun it is to have your own Andrews Field, and the president flies into Andrews Field all the time in Washington. I wanted to point out there's a display over to my left by the glass area about General Andrews that our alum Tom Wood and librarians put together. And downstairs, and we're glad to have people walk around this building after the program, there are two portraits of Travis Brannon and General Andrews, and we'd love for you to see that. And so as I mentioned, this will be slightly different this morning since we're combining Veterans Day with this dedication of the stands and the field. So we'll start now with the choir behind me singing the National Anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
It has been especially meaningful to recognize Travis Brannon, class of 2007. I went downstairs with Susie Brannon a little while ago and showed her the painting of Travis, and again I urge all of you to go downstairs and see the two paintings together of General Andrews and Travis Brannon. It's also been particularly meaningful to talk to some of his classmates about this dedication and about him. I was talking with Chris Cahill earlier this morning about a close friend, Knight Hammock, of theirs, who came to, he's in the military still. He came recently to visit, and just to see his emotional reaction to these stands and the portrait of Travis, I knew immediately this was more than worthwhile. And so I asked one of Travis's very good friends and classmates, Chris Cahill, to make some comments this morning in recognizing Travis Walker Brannon. Chris, would you please come up? Please join me in welcoming Chris.
So I'm humbled and honored to be in front of you today, speaking about two themes that are very near and dear to my heart, which are the NBA lacrosse program and my best friend, Travis Brannon. I moved to Nashville when I was 10 years old, and I met Travis on my very first day in the 4th grade, a day that changed my life forever. We quickly became inseparable. That is until our parents and teachers realized that we were far too disruptive in the same classroom and made sure that they were to keep us out of the same class going forward. I was initially drawn towards Travis because he was always at the center of the fun. Looking back, he embodied the old adage that only boring people get bored. And those who knew him would agree there was never, ever a dull moment. So I moved from Connecticut with a lacrosse stick in my hand and a real, genuine passion for the sport. I remember giving lacrosse sticks to all of my closest friends for their birthdays in grade school. We genuinely revered the NBA lacrosse program. Looking up to guys like the Lyles twins and Andrew Quinn and Russell McWhorter. We dreamed about the opportunity to play for Coach Cooper, Coach Smith, and Coach Harvey. Freshman year, Travis was cut from the lacrosse team, varsity and JV, both of them. How fitting it is today that we dedicate some benches for his honor. Seriously though, nobody would have blamed him for accepting defeat, chasing other pursuits. But he faced this adversity head on. He put in the work when no one else was watching to improve his game and earn a spot on the roster. He eventually established a role for himself on the 2006 state championship team. Travis went on to Sewanee, where he played at the collegiate level and was named captain his senior year. Same kid. It was also at Sewanee where Travis heard a calling that he couldn't ignore, and it was that of the United States Marine Corps. After graduating from Sewanee, Travis finished officer candidate school and commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marines. He attended flight school in Pensacola, received his wings of gold, as well as a follow-on order to fly the AH-1 Whiskey Super Cobra. At his squadron, HMLA 367, or Scarface, as they're known around the Corps, Travis quickly distinguished himself as an elite pilot, earning the designation of aircraft commander shortly after his arrival. Upon return from his first deployment, Travis was selected to attend the Marine Weapons Tactics Instructor Course in Yuma, Arizona, an honor reserved for the most capable pilots in the Marine Corps aviation. It was during this course where Travis died in a helicopter crash on March 30th, 2019. Being a Marine is what he did, but it's not who he was. And I say that not to take anything away from his military pursuits, quite the opposite. Travis was a hell of a Marine. He was within arm's reach of becoming a weapons and tactics instructor, the highest qualification one can achieve as a Marine helicopter pilot. But on Veterans Day, I just believe it's important that we remember the brave men and women who selfishly served this country, not by their rank and file, but remember them as people and illuminate their ethos. So being a Marine is what he did, but it's not who he was. My best friend Travis was a musician. He was a lifelong learner. He was a man of strong faith and a man of simple needs. He was a selfless leader. He was a goofball. He was a creative writer, a pilot, a dreamer, a friend to many, a son to Susie and Travis Sr., a brother to Colin, a husband to Virginia, and the best father ever to Millie. Sorry. Ten weeks ago, my wife and I welcomed our very first child into this world, Travis John Cahill. Feeding him in the middle of the night or daydreaming while he naps on my chest, I often find myself wondering, what advice might Travis have for his little namesake? And I believe it would be this: who you are is more important than what you do. Lacrosse is what we did, but it was just a sport. We share a passion for the game, sure, but the real magic of it all was what surrounded the sport. It was the bus rides, the team dinners, the training room, the post-game celebrations, the locker room, the walks to the lower field. Who you are is more important than what you do. And when that collective identity of who you are represents the teammates alongside of you, the rich history of those who've worn the jersey before you, it is at that time you can begin to experience the power of a program like this. This terrace is a beautiful homage to Travis and to the pride of the NBA lacrosse program. Thank you.
Chris, thanks for remembering Travis so beautifully and reminding all of us that it's much more important to think about who we are than almost anything else. Now we'll have Robert Holliday come speak about some of the programs NBA does in conjunction with the tradition this morning.
Good morning. My name is Robert Holliday, and I'm a senior here at MBA and the president of the Army-Navy Club here at school. On behalf of MBA's Army-Navy Club, I would like to thank you all for attending this year's Veterans Day breakfast. In honoring the veterans this year, MBA is fortunate enough to have partnered with Wreaths across America, whose mission is to remember, honor, and teach by coordinating wreath-laying ceremonies at around 1,600 locations across the United States. This year, National Wreaths Across America Day, which the Army-Navy Club will be assisting with in the Nashville area, is on December 18th. We have tables set up if you would out that way. If you want more information on Wreaths Across America. So, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Charlie Graves. I'm a senior here at MBA and vice president of the Army-Navy Club. Today, we honor those living in past who selflessly fought for the United States of America. Whenever freedom was under attack, you answered the call to defend the country and its people. You gave up the lives you were living, and some gave up the life they would never get to live, all to preserve the freedom which we reside under today. And for that, we are forever grateful to you and forever in debt to you for your service to the country. If I may, I would like to honor those veterans here with us today. Please hold your applause for one moment. Could all veterans here with us today please stand? If you have a son or daughter on active duty or in the reserve, please stand. If you have a parent who's on active duty or in the reserve, please stand. And finally, if you yourself are on active duty, please stand. Thank you and your families for your service. Let us not forget the men and women who have passed defending this nation. We owe to them and to their families to keep their memory alive by honoring them for their ultimate sacrifice. Thank you, and you may have your seat. And just thank you so much for what you have done. And we have some big shoes to fill. Let us prepare taps to be played on the trumpet. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you, Charlie and Robert. Our main speaker will be introduced by his grandson, Rowan. So please come on over, Rowan. He's had a great week. He got accepted into the college he wants to attend 2 nights ago, and he gets to introduce his grandfather. So join me in welcoming Rowan Chapa.
Good morning, everyone. This morning, I am pleased to introduce MBA's Veterans Day speaker, my grandfather, Colonel Bob Patrick, U.S. Army retired, or as he is known at our house, P-Bob, P-Bob, or just plain P. After serving over 28 years active duty in the U.S. Army, he dedicated himself to honoring our nation's veterans. First, in Washington, D.C., as a director with the creation of the National World War II Memorial and its dedication in 2004. Secondly, with the Library of Congress, sorry about that. And its dedication in 2004. Secondly, with the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, where for 10 years he oversaw the creation of the nation's most extensive collection of veterans' oral histories. He continues today to ensure the stories of America's veterans are preserved to instruct and inspire generations to come. I'm proud to present the number one veteran of my life, Colonel Bob Patrick, aka Bob.
It's the risk you take when your grandson introduces you and gives away family secrets about nicknames and things like that. I am thrilled to be here today on Veterans Day. Brad, thanks for inviting me to do this. This is the day when we recognize our veterans. And looking at the audience out here, I'm kind of preaching to the choir a little bit about what Veterans Day is all about and why it's important. But I want to touch on a few things about veterans. One is that I ask people, who is the veteran in your life? And I know a lot of people here have veterans in their lives. They may be here with them, but a lot of people don't. And a lot of people don't understand what being a veteran is all about. And they say, well, my dad wasn't in the Army, my mother wasn't in the Army or whatever. And so they don't know. And I'll give you an example that I've run into with my good friend Tom Hanks. With my acquaintance Tom Hanks. I was with the World War II Memorial Project, and he was one of the honorary chairmen, and I was in the room with Tom Hanks. But Tom Hanks told in an interview about how he got involved with veterans. And he said, I was a young man, I was just graduating from high school, I was working at a hotel in California as a bellboy. And there was a gentleman there who delivered the dry cleaning every morning. Came in the morning, brought it back at night. And he was gone for a couple of weeks. And Hank said, he came back, and I said, well, kind of being a wise guy that you are when you're 19, 20 years old, where have you been? And the veteran says, I've been to France. And he said, well, what are you doing going to France? He says, I'm going to visit my buddies that didn't come back. And he said in a 1-minute conversation with this guy, he found out he landed at D-Day, fought his way across Germany, been wounded, and here he is today, delivering the laundry at the hotel. And Tom Hanks said, here I was worrying about my next exam, and well, I've got a date Saturday night. When this guy was my age, he was saving the world. And that just kind of inspired him for the rest of his life now about what being a veteran is all about. As I look around today, there are veterans in people's lives here that are sitting out in front of us. I have to say that I think there's a lot of thought being given to gaze from some folks, all the folks here at MBA, about a veteran that they lost last spring, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Sharble, who tragically was lost in an automobile accident. I met Joe a couple of weeks before that happened because Rowan was on the rifle team. Joe wasn't just a veteran, a Lieutenant Colonel, Marine Corps, retired. He was a teacher. He was a mentor, he was a coach. And he touched the lives of a lot of young men here at this school. Touched the lives of my grandson and our family. Rowan was a newbie here last year, had a kind of a rough year getting involved, and Joe took him under his wing and got him going. And that's representative of what a lot of veterans do. Once they serve in the military, they also find other ways of serving, be it at a school, be it in a community, working with organizations. So that's what veterans are all about, and that's how veterans become part of people's lives that maybe people don't realize. Veterans also have stories, and that's the kind of second part of my life after I retired from the Army. As Rowan mentioned, I was the director of the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. We have Joe's story in the Library of Congress. He did an interview with the Veterans History Project, and to give you an idea of what that project is, it was a congressionally legislated project in the year 2000. I'm glad you're all sitting down, or most are sitting down, that was passed with unanimous bipartisan support. What a concept. To create a moral history project to collect and preserve the personal accounts of America's veterans so that future generations would appreciate what service to this country is all about. And it's become one of the largest projects in the world of veterans. over 100,000, all collected by people like yourself, family members, students, all kinds of other organizations have collected these stories and put them in the Library of Congress. And these aren't just the grand and glorious stories that you see in the movies or read in books. This is a story about what everyone did when they served in the military, what it felt like to serve in the military, what it smelled like to be serve in the military. When I made this presentation like this for the part of the project, I said, we collect stories from the cockpit to the foxhole, but also from the mess hall to the motor pool, because it's recognized that any story a veteran has is important for us to learn from and to gather. Just to give you a few examples, people ask me, well, what's your favorite story? And I said, well, there are 100,000 of them, and it's kind of difficult to kind of pick out just one or two. But I'll talk to you about three that kind of struck me, and I'll tell you why I chose them. One was with a gentleman named Robert De Leon. Robert De Leon was a hard-boiled kid from New York City who was made a medic and was sent to Vietnam. And he talked about, in his interview, about the things he saw in Vietnam, the actions he was in, and he saw a lot of action. And he talked about one day when they had a medevac going on, where they were trying to get all the wounded out of there, and they had one soldier left and no medevac to come in for him. The battalion commander in his helicopter flew down and said, I'll take him. And as De Leon described it, helicopter comes down, the battalion commander's in the door and says, give me my son. And takes the soldier into the helicopter. And what De Leon says after this is, I was jealous. I was jealous of that soldier. And the reason he said he was jealous is his father left him when he was 3 years old. And he never knew fatherly love. And he saw that day for the very first time and said, I'm jealous of that guy. The other story I have to talk about is a Marine who fought in Guadalcanal named Ted Cummins. Saw action, was shot at by the Japanese, was even attacked by Japanese patrol boats, had a very bad day in Guadalcanal. And they asked him, well, tell us something about it. What was important about it? And he said, well, when it was all over, some guy gave me a can of peaches. I said, a can of peaches? He said, yeah, they gave me a can of peaches. Tastes like champagne. And that was the fondest memory he had of that day. Third story is Frances Liberty. Frances Liberty was an Army nurse. She enlisted against her father's desires to go into the Army to be a nurse. First place she found herself was on Anzio Beach with a platoon of other nurses who landed on the beach. And they said her platoon leader, who's about 5 feet tall, goes up to this big colonel and says, reporting for duty, and he says, what are you doing here? A bunch of women, get back on that boat. And he said, the platoon leader says, we're here, deal with it. A few days later, they were needed on that beach. It was one of the toughest fighting in the World War II was on Anzio Beach. In fact, 7 of those nurses did not make it in the end, were killed, she said. But days later, they were going up the road toward Rome, and the same platoon leader went to the same commander to complain about the latrines and how her nurses were being required to navigate the latrines, if you can get a picture of this. And the commander looked down at her and said, deal with it. And she said, and we did. I choose those stories because when veterans think about what's happened to them, it isn't about what shooting at people and all that is all about, but it's things like compassion. It's things like humanity. It's memorable occasions and more than likely some humor involved in it. And so those are the kind of stories that veterans carry around with them. We need to collect those still. Through this project. If you're interested in learning more about it, I'd be glad to talk to you after later on today. But my message today to all of us particularly to some of the younger members here. I know today is Veterans Day, and you want to go up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service. And I think we should all do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But what I would encourage you to do, if you have the time, you see it open, is take the time to ask that veteran a few questions. What service were you in? Where'd you go? What'd you do? What do you think is important about being a veteran? And you're expressing your gratitude. But I tell you, the gratitude you'll get back from that veteran is that it gives them the opportunity to open your mind about what service to country is all about and some of the things that they have done to serve our country. So it's great to be here with you on Veterans Day. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. May God bless the veterans who are here today and all the veterans around our country who have served so honorably. But just as importantly, may God bless the young men and women who serve on active duty today to make sure our country is the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate your coming down for this event. I'm grateful that your family came to NBA last year, and it was particularly moving to see you and Rowan at Joe Sharville's funeral at Arlington, and thanks for remembering Joe in your comments. We will conclude this morning's program with the headmaster singers who will come up, I think now, behind me. Is that right? And sing the theme from the Band of Brothers. Again, thanks to our speakers, Chris Cahill and Bob Patrick. Thanks to our musicians, and thanks to our students who spoke about the remembrances as well, and thanks to all of you for being here today. If you're interested in going in the building, please do, and look at the display on General Andrews. Again, thanks, and have a great Veterans Day.